but we're still seeing a lot of people come through, and especially just the past 2 or 3 months, we've seen a real increase in the need of families. Over the summer, we were serving about 60 people or 60 families of distribution. Now we're serving between 80 and 90 families of distribution. So just in a few months, we've seen a huge increase. So here is our statistics from last fiscal year, which goes from August to July. So we fed 1,200 families, 4,700 people with 36,000 pounds of food, which includes all of the pantry staples and fresh groceries. And we had 177 volunteers last year, which is always fun to look at. And then this is just what we've done this year. So in August and December, we only had one distribution. September through November, we had 2 distributions. And then this fiscal year so far, we've distributed just under 20,000 pounds of food to our community. So this is just through July of 2022, but through our 8 years of operations, we have served 12,000 families, 51,000 people with over 4,800,000 pounds of food, which that's a lot of food to think about going out into the community. And that just warms my heart to know that there are people in the community that are being fed that otherwise probably wouldn't be getting a meal that night. Yeah. So how can you help? Come volunteer with us. Come see the bus. Come see the students. Come meet our clients. It's a really, really great opportunity, and it's really low barrier. I mean, when we set up in the morning, setup only takes about an hour of time, and you're just making food boxes in the morning. If you come in the afternoon and you meet our clients, it only takes about an hour and a half. But you can look on our website, which I'll show you here in a second. If you want to sign up, you're more than welcome to there. You're also always welcome to donate items. Hygiene items are very, very highly wanted for our clients, specifically laundry detergent. Those items can be really expensive, and we don't get those items donated very often, and we can't really go out and purchase them because of the high expense. So if you're looking to donate items, we really, really encourage hygiene items. And funds are always welcomed as well. We can purchase a distribution's worth of food for less than $200. So we fed 90 families tonight, 85 families tonight on $200. There's not very many other organizations or very many other people that can do that sort of thing. And then we're hiring for another pantry coordinator. So if you know someone that is available on Wednesdays and wants to come help us, we really need the support Wednesdays on distribution days. And finally, I just want to say thank you to the district. You guys have been so incredibly supportive since the very beginning, since donating the bus, asking us to come speak, even today from Paul, we got notification that the trailer was ready, and it's amazing and so cute. So we're so excited to have that right next to our bus. So really just want to say thank you to all of you for supporting us. And we'd love for you to come out and see the bus and see it in action. Yeah. Anybody have any questions I can answer or Shar can answer?
Did you say there was a website that we could go to sign up to
Yes,
volunteer?
let me show you that. Here we go. So it's foodforfamilies.net.
Okay,
And you can just go to volunteer, and then you do volunteer sign up right here.
great.
But there's a lot of other really great information on the website as well.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? Man, the impact that you guys are having on our community is amazing. And so thank you so much for your time and your dedication. And it's so great to see a graduate just continue to move through and give back to the community here. So thank you both so much for coming.
Awesome.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
everyone.
All right. Next report, I believe we will have a summer school report. Would you like to introduce that, James?
Yeah, so we have a summer school report, and it took a little bit for us to get it together, and then there were some other obstacles, and so now we're here. And this report will be provided by Jenny Lucas, our Curriculum and Student Learning Administrator. We have Maureen Callahan, our Director of Curriculum and Student Learning, and then Laura Scully is our Centennial High School Assistant Principal, and so she's welcome to come up. And in fact, I will bring my microphone over there so you can have that over there too.
Good evening, Board of Directors. I am the
mover of the PowerPoint. So. Actually, I do want to just say this was a powerhouse team of administrators. Sonia Nelson Carranza, Ann Riddle, Laura Scully, and Jenny Lucas really from ground up stood up a program for K-12 over the summer, last couple summers actually, and just continue to get better fine-tuning it. So with that, I'll hand it off to Jenny.
Thank you. Can I come up? That's fine. Perfect. Looking at it. Awesome. Thank you. Good evening, Board of Directors and Superintendent Owens. I'm pleased to be here with you this evening, along with Laura and Anne, to present a summary of our 2022 summer program. We learned a lot from our 2021 summer program, and we held on to the elements that worked well for us and added new elements in order to provide a well-rounded, inclusive, and engaging program this past summer. Okay. We designed our program to reflect ODE's vision of an equity-driven learning program that cultivates joy, connection, and curiosity through well-rounded summer learning. We created an equitable, inclusive program that was relationship and student-centered and provided enriching, integrated learning experiences that were fun, exciting, and engaging for our kids. Our elementary and middle school programs were similar in their design and structure. Students engaged in integrated STEM learning through Camp Invention. Each grade level completed 3 modules designed to help students create, collaborate, and gain confidence through building prototypes and solving real-world problems. Modules were focused on themes such as robotics, flight, physics, engineering, and art. Students were also offered opportunities to engage in social-emotional learning through morning meetings every day. And while the Camp Invention modules did include language arts and math, we also gave students daily practice through our online program called Freckle that's tied to our STAR interim assessment. Students also received enrichment activities, including art, cooking, and PE during our summer program. Oh, go back, sorry. Too soon, sorry about that. We offered 3 different programs at the high school level. We had 9th grade counts for incoming freshmen, and they were offered integrated learning experiences that culminated in a Friday field trip. Credit recovery was offered to 9th through 12th grade students, and students who wished to finish credit that they weren't quite done with could do that through our virtual academy. There we go. We also had embedded special education recovery services, and they were provided at all 3 levels. Functional skill programming was also available for elementary and secondary students. We offered a K-12 speech clinic for students who were not enrolled in summer programming as well. And small group and one-to-one tutoring sessions were provided at both Butler Creek and Centennial Middle School. Our Sun partners played an important role in our programming this year, as they did last year, and they provided enrichment learning opportunities at each level of the program. At the elementary level, 132 of our students chose to participate in the Sun program, which happened in the afternoon following our morning program. They were hosted by Sun partners who serve Meadows, Park Lane, Patrick Lynch, and Pal Butte. And middle school and 9th grade counts did something a little different. Students were split into 2 groups. Half of the students attended Sun enrichment in the morning and then had integrated learning in the afternoon, and the other half flip-flopped. The Sun staff also participated in the Friday field trips with 9th grade counts. Okay. We served a total of 787 students, grades K through 12. And this disaggregated information on the slide shows that students who participated in our summer program closely reflect Centennial's student body. This slide depicts the number of students per program who chose to participate at each level. And just to be clear, the CVA program was available to any high schooler who wanted to continue credits. Okay? A wide representation of staff members were needed to provide a high-quality, robust summer program, and it was a real team effort, and our staff worked together to ensure students had memorable and meaningful learning experiences. Our programs ran at 4 different locations. Our elementary program ran at Butler Creek. All middle school students attended CMS. Ninth grade counts and credit recovery occurred at CHS, and students who completed continuing credits were served by CVA staff virtually. Our program was a 3-week program that ran from July 5th through the 22nd. And our summer staff spent 2 weeks in June participating in trainings and preparing for instruction and setting up the learning environment for students. We measured outcomes at the elementary and middle level in a variety of informal ways, including final projects, student work, exit tickets, and oral interviews with students. All students reported having a positive learning experience this summer, and all of our students also showed growth in their understanding of the content reflected in the modules through Camp Invention. In the high school program, a total of 178 half credits were earned. Yeah. So 165 of those half credits were earned in-house, with 13 being earned through community partners, which Laura might be able to explain more thoroughly. And this is really thanks to the high school staff that work with All Hands Raised. Mm.
Through All Hands Raised. For a number of years, we've worked with that organization to, and many community partners in the area. So if any Centennial students were to attend NEA or Latino Network or Girls Inc., or there's just so many programs around the area, we have agreements on how students can earn credit. And every spring we go through our agreements with them, and a team approves that those classes can earn credit. So 13 of our students earn credit at Gresham High School through Latino Network, with students from Gresham District as well. And then they reported the credits, and we reviewed them on our campus. And we had a student earn credit through Portland Parks and Rec. So that was our other one. And it's awesome because then kids have a chance to choose a program that fits their needs and their family's needs. And it's great. We love the coordination, and we have a better process for capturing all those credits now.
Thanks. All right. Well, that's kind of it in a nutshell. If you have any questions for Anne or Laura and I, we're happy to answer them.
I have a couple, so, here we go. We're talking about credit recovery, but do we ever talk about credit advancement, like I want to get ahead in the game?
That was the continuing credit.
So that's how that's the definition of continuing credit is?
It's one of the definitions, because we had students who weren't quite done with some credits. So we offered them the opportunity to use summer to finish. But there were a few students who said, I want to earn an extra credit in something, and we let them do that.
And we occasionally have kids who are off. I don't know if this is on. It feels like it's not on. I'm talking to this thing. That are maybe off cycle in math, and there are some classes that they can capture credit that way, and they get back on cycle. So maybe they got a half credit at the middle school, and so they're in this wonky place, and they want to start calculus at the beginning of the year and go forward. So they need to do a catch-up credit there, or an advancement credit to get them. They start out a little ahead, but they need to be a little bit more ahead to hit that marker. And ninth grade counts as 100% credit advancement. Kids are getting a jump on their credit earning by taking that program. They start high school with credit.
And is it advertised that way?
Yeah.
Our students would know that this is something that they could be doing.
Promote it that
Do
way.
we only reach out to those students who are in that in-between area, or do we reach out to any student who might be interested in summer?
We welcome all students, and there is some intentional invitation of kids that we think could really benefit from getting oriented, because the point of ninth grade counts is to get accustomed to the high school and to get kids in, meet the high school staff, get familiar with the building before there are large numbers of kids in the building. And it really helps get kids connected. It's really fun to see them graduate, because we got close connections with them in the summer before they started. And we try to keep them engaged over that time. But it's a lot of fun, and they want to come back. We were talking, Marin and I, about offering a peer tutoring credit for kids who have been in the program before, because they always want to come back and do it again. And if we had them as older students as peer tutors, they could come and support support the program and enjoy the trips and help the younger kids. So we just think it'd be a really cool opportunity.
So, Madam Chair, I had 3 questions. Can I do all 3?
Jump right
Oh. It's like, does everyone get a turn before I get a second? The question I had was, how does a student, this is being offered to our students who are currently in our brick and mortar, but our virtual students. Are they offered the same to come into the brick and mortar as well during the summer and maybe can weigh that because we know why a number of our students choose our virtual academy. I mean, the reasons are varied, right? But sometimes it's an opportunity to experience brick and mortar after a pandemic. That hesitation that I think I've watched my grandchildren go through. I was in virtual, now you want me in a building? And so some are more comfortable staying virtual, but they've never experienced brick and mortar. So it's like, can we help students make decisions if we give them this kind of exposure and this
We also
fewer people?
intentionally kept the class sizes smaller than what they offer.
There you go.
Typically during the regular school year, our curriculum, the content that we chose to focus on, we want that bridge between what's a summer, what's an engagement, what's a social, and what's an academic. How we bring those 2 things together, not doing more of just the same of what happens during a regular school year, but really making this a different experience. Because we really also want to reconnect and re-engage some students that we know have struggled with re-engaging coming back from COVID. To speak to you had a question about can anybody that wanted to. We do have some limitations in terms of how many staff we were able to attract, wanting to keep the class sizes on the smaller side so it was a higher intensity of a service for the students that did participate, to really look at how are we amplifying, the effect of the students that are participating in it.
Yes, but we were able to accommodate every student who registered. Yes, so.
Last question?
Yeah.
Just why are we starting the high school at 8 o'clock and the elementary at 9:15 when we've been trying to later start times for high school students?
Blessing.
That was transportation because one of the challenges this year was all of our elementary students were served at Butler Creek, so they had to pick up students around the district to go to Butler Creek. So we worked closely with them, and they felt that was the best way to do it. So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Please.
Were there any challenges in 2022 that you are hoping to address for 2023?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this one a lot because we have our meeting on Friday to begin planning for the next round. But we had a little bit of confusion because we offered so many opportunities, K-12, district-wide, that families and staff got a little bit confused about what program did what, and so we have a little bit of work clearing that up. And also, some of our families, I saw this with the high school, we filled every slot of 9th grade counts with students, but not every student attended, even though we made positive phone connection and said, we're excited to see you. They just attended the one at Latino Network. So there was some confusion with families, with multiple people talking to them, probably Latino Network outreach, our outreach, middle school outreach, that they got confused about what they were signing up for, and what might have been 3 programs sounded like one, and they thought we're good, right? So we have a little bit of work to do in shoring that up, because we could have served 13 more kids, right? Because they got credit, they signed up, we served them at another program, but we had 13 open seats as a result, and we just didn't know until where the kids went. It took some, well, when the credit request came in, it was obvious. It was like, oh, that's where they went. We wondered. They went somewhere, and this is good, and but we can work on that, I think, coming into this next year.
I think we could also work on continuing to think about how are we prioritize, how are we emphasizing who would most benefit, who most needs participation in a program like this, not just who is most effective as a parent or as a family in advocating for it, but which students most need it. I think our data on demographics showed that our students were fairly equally represented, but we also know that not all of our groups of students have come out of COVID equally successful. And so how are we maybe refining how we are either nominating or prioritizing or inviting or reducing barriers to application for some families and students?
Yeah, there were some challenges last year with getting field trips booked because so many of the partners that we've used and places that we've gone to had developed online service things, and they had not offered field trips for a while. Then they had some online, but they didn't have their systems together quite yet because they were moving back to in-person, but they weren't sure. Remember, we all started with masks, didn't we, at the first week?
Yeah, we did.
So COVID peaked, and so we were sort of in that in-between, and it was a challenge getting things in order. So we're hoping that this year is a little bit more smooth. Everybody's got their systems back together. But we got it done.
Thank you. I've got one too. So are all of the credits that were earned at Community Partners, were all those ninth grade counts, or were there, okay.
Yeah.
That's it, I was just curious.
Because those are elective as opposed to core courses.
Correct, they're
that would need to
elective
be curriculum
Okay.
based and
Awesome, thank you.
I hope maybe last question, right? Budget. This is a Director Southerton or a Superintendent Owens, but where's the money coming from and how does this continue to be funded?
we can speak to where it came from.
Great question. So for the last 2 years, the Oregon Department of Education, through the state of Oregon, has come out with summer enrichment and continued education and credit recovery advancement grants, which have been exceptionally helpful. But as budget committee members, you'll also recall that we assigned $500,000 for this year and for next year out of our unfinished learning funds from the American Rescue Plan and the ESSER funds to have a more robust, enhanced summer programming. We've also received another grant for Park Lane specifically of around $97,000, and there's one more year in that grant. So kind of combining the funds together, we're able to do an expanded summer school offering at Park Lane, our normal credit recovery at the high school, and then enhanced opportunities throughout the district should the budget committee continue to approve that, because if we adopt a budget 1 year at a time, we've allocated those funds or kind of earmarked those funds, but it will go through the budget committee process and of course the board adoption process. So should that go through approved as planned, we'll be able to do 2 additional years of robust summer school programming above our normal credit recovery program that we offer. After that, it would be looking for a more sustainable funding source, because you'll recall that American Rescue Plans and ESSER funds expire September of 2024. And we'll use them before they expire as well with other unfinished learning opportunities that we're providing for students and families. Welcome. Any other questions around finances? Well, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm really glad to see the peer mentor volunteers. I'd love to see that expanded and maybe even more credit were offered and advertised for the high school students. And maybe even as I spoke with a neighboring school district, they have some paid positions for students. So maybe juniors and seniors getting back in there as camp counselors and maybe even paid positions. I'd love to see that. Budget notwithstanding.
Thank you all so much for a fantastic summer.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, it looks like we have an equity audit report. Would you like to introduce? Thank you.
Absolutely. And Missy, if you see Lauren in the gallery, if you could pull her up, that would be great. So as a part of our strategic planning process, one of the elements that we are intending to include involves an equity audit. Equity metrics are something that we have talked about previously That is something that would be important for us to have established for us organizationally. And so we have Dr. Katsuda, who is going to provide a little bit more detail as far as the planning and intention and funding here. And then we have Lauren Klafke from Performance Fact, because one of the things that we liked about Performance Fact when we originally did our vetting of organizations that provide strategic planning is that they also provide an equity audit component as well. And so we wanted to make sure that our strategic planning process was equity-based, and this will help advance that effort. So without further ado and without stealing your thunder, I will turn it over to Dr. Katsuda to go ahead and cue us up here.
Thank you. That's a nice warm-up. So yes, as was stated, the equity audit is a critical component of strategic planning. It also fulfills our plan that we submitted to ODE around diversification of our educator workforce. If you recall, last spring, we gathered a representative team of staff members to design a plan we submitted to ODE for House Bill 4030 funds. And our plan included, and the staff involved in that planning team strongly advocated for an equity audit, not only to learn a little bit more about the the state of affairs within the district, but part of the audit also provides us information with specific ways as we analyze our system and the conditions in our district systems to further advance retention and recruitment of staff of color. And so that the equity audit serves multiple purposes, and those are just two that we're describing tonight. We also this year engaged in the request for a proposal process, of which Performance Fact submitted a bid, which was selected. So it's my pleasure to introduce Lauren Klafke, who should be a familiar face to you all, from Performance Fact, to share a little bit more about the equity audit service program. Yeah, Lauren.
Great. Hi, everybody. Good evening. It's great to be joining you virtually. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I prepared some slides to just kind of orient you to the components of the equity audit process, and I'm excited to dig in and answer questions as we go through our discussion. We feel really honored and privileged to be able to continue and deepen the work that we're doing with the Centennial School District, and are looking forward to engaging in this next phase. I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see?
We can see.
Perfect. Okay. Now can I see you and my screen? Yes, I can. So to bring back and kind of center in a quote, we ground our research and our work, both as strategic planning, but also in equity audits, around really looking at the ways in which the systems that are supporting our students in education, to what extent are they creating access and opportunity for all students, and to what extent are they perhaps unintentionally or perhaps by design creating barriers for student success. And when we first engaged, I think, with the board a few months ago, we took a look at this quote and have had some discussions. This was from actually the report in the Commission of Higher Education from, I think it was 1947, where it's been a long time that our country, our nation has recognized that educational inequity is something that we need to be focusing in on and addressing. And we at Performance Fact really undergird our approach by adopting the framework that's been proposed by the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Mathematics to guide our work. And so I'm going to share a little bit about kind of the phases that we're going to go through, as well as kind of what the information is that will undergird it. So there are three phases to the equity audit. The first phase is beginning once we get underway with our contract and our work here. So the first piece is that we have survey administration for all of the different constituents and groups within the CSD system. We're going to be looking at the equity indicators and doing an audit that's going to, we've gathered some of the data during the strategic planning process, but that was looking more district-wide. We're actually go school by school at this point. And then in addition, there's going to be the school classroom instructional audit that I'll talk a little bit more about. And then at the end of phase one, we'll be preparing a report of our findings from this first phase, and that report will come to the board and to the community. When we complete phase one, we're going to start digging into answering questions that get raised from phase one to make key recommendations, which will include planning and holding affinity grace groups and focus groups. We're going to dig into do a policy and practices review. And we're planning on having a more robust, hopefully at least a one-day retreat with the cabinet and board. And if there's a team that the district wants to convene to focus on this work, that would include that. And so our process is twofold. One is there will be report of findings and there will be all this information, but we still want to engage the team in making the local meaning and constructs out of what gets pulled from our findings. Then in May, we'll transition to phase three, which includes the implementation phase. It's early implementation. So we're going to be ensuring we're centering in on what are the research-based practices that we believe are going to have the strongest impact. There'll be the development of a dashboard that will be used by the district and the board to be able to monitor key equity indicators, both during the year, so have touch points during the school year as well as annually. And then we'll begin early implementation of the plan. So the the surveys in phase one, there are 3 surveys. The first survey is a student survey. It will be administered for students in grades 3rd through 12th grade. And there are 4 domains that will be part of the survey. They're focused on student engagement, safe and supportive school climate, supportive and trusting relationships, and the quality of teaching and learning. The staff survey has some parallel domains. They have safe and supportive climate, supportive and trusting relationships, quality of teaching and learning is the instructional staff will be responding to those questions. And then the staff as well will be responding to a section that's about their experiences of diversity, equity, and inclusion as staff members. The final survey that will be administered is a family or caregiver survey. So this will go out to all family or caregivers of guardians of students in Centennial School District. And they will be responding based on overall perception of the schools. They'll be looking at student engagement and schooling, supports for families, relationships, communication, engagement, and also diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's the content of the surveys. And again, phase one, we're looking at January through March to administer all the surveys. And we can talk more if we have questions to dig into what those is. The second part of phase one is really just digging into the data. We might say a paper audit. So based on the indicators we're going to be looking at kindergarten readiness, learning and engagement, attainment. We're going to be looking at the extent of racial, ethnic, and economic segregation within schools and classrooms. And looking at equitable access to high quality early learning programs, high quality curriculum and instruction, and supportive school environments. This will be done on a school by school level. So we're gathering the data currently. We're going to get started on kind of mining and pulling together the data for this audit. The final part of phase one, and it has a little pink star on this one because their reporting rolls into phase two a little bit. We partner with the National Center of Urban School Transformation out of UC San Diego, NCUST, and Dr. Francisco Escobedo is the lead for that program. And they will be a team, they'll have a team between I think 3 to 5 or 6 folks from NCUST are visiting each of the 9 schools in the district. These are 2 to 3 day visits. Their aim is to observe every classroom, at least once. They're holding 2 teacher focus groups at each site, 1 staff focus group, 2 student focus groups at each site, a parent focus group, and a leadership team focus group. They also aim to observe a professional learning or collaboration session in action. And they will be creating and submitting to the board as part of our submission and review of phase one, a report and recommendation for each school. So every school will have its own specific report of findings based on both the survey, the data poll, and then also this part of the site visits. Dr. Katsuda, should I go through all the phases, and then we'll come back, or pause at each phase for questions? You tell me.
Yeah, that was quite a bit. We may want to pause and
Yeah. I'm not in the
invite
room,
any
so I
questions
sort of
about
have
that
to.
section.
Yeah, yeah.
Phase
So
by
let's
phase.
start with phase one, and just I would love to open it up for any questions, comments, and I'm happy to go back.
There might be a few. Go ahead.
I had a question about the 9 schools participating. Will that include CVA and CTC? Is that kind of encompassed with all?
My understanding is that they can do virtual, and they can do CTC, but I think that they are not currently included in the scope of work.
And part of that is because of their unique structure. So we're still discussing what that might look like with the team, the urban school transformation team, just because of the virtual nature and just the nature of CTC. So that's under construction.
Okay, I just hate for them to, get their opinions not be included in the whole picture of it. I mean, if we're doing an equity audit, let's look at everybody across the whole district.
One of the questions that I had is that you called out racial equity, economic equity. I'm curious if there's going to be any attention to, forgive me if I'm using the wrong terms here, like ability or disability, special needs students with either physical or mental disabilities. Are we going to look at the equity of education that they're receiving along the scope as well?
Absolutely. So for every kind of, we're looking at language, right? So language, we'll be looking at students who are participating in special education or who are receiving special education services. We'll be looking at gender and gender identity. We'll be looking at race and looking at economics. And I think that those are all of the areas. Some of that data, some of those slices are not as accessible, and that's where potentially some follow-up, would be a point with some focus group follow-up if we don't, for example, have a particular data set that we can identify some attributes. You might be that's where we would ask some more questions, but yes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
I have two questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Back to the surveying, the students that are being surveyed, will that be something that's done during the school time, or because for maximum participation?
Yes, that's the plan right now.
Okay.
We're administering it.
Would that also be true of the staff survey?
Yes.
Okay. And then the next question is about the site visitations and the observation in all classrooms. How are the educators being notified that, hey, there's going to be somebody in your class for this particular day at this particular time? And I mean, that means the school, right? Because you have new faces wandering around your building, you're kind of like, what's going on here? So how does that get communicated to staff in the buildings?
That's a great question. So I'm trying to remember exactly what day it was, but it was in December, early December. We sent out a video to all staff, providing them an overview of what the equity audit would entail and provided information about the 2-day site visits. Principals have also been provided information about the 2-day site visits, and they've forwarded a script and a pre-scripted email to staff. And then prior to the site visit, there's another reminder going out to staff in regards to what it entails and the purpose of the audit, et cetera.
And in addition, Dr. Acevedo and his team work primarily one-on-one with reach out directly to work with the principals to really ensure what is the messaging, and they're happy to pop into a meeting or to share additional resources to really frame the visit. It's really, I think, a powerful and positive, and I'm hopefully going to feel a very affirming experience for the community.
And then the follow-up question is, if you're walking into Dr. Zebra's classroom and the data is going to be shared, am I going to be able to identify any building or particular classroom based on the data?
No, there's not, you will be able to identify the building because it's a school level report. But and we can share a sample of what those reports look like so that you can see what you can expect in terms of what it looks like. Yeah, we'll do that.
Excellent. Continue.
Oh, okay,
Please.
that's me. Am I still sharing my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so we went through this part, so I went back to the surveys. Okay, so phase 2 is conducting a review of key policies. There are 4 policy kind of domains that we were identified to focus in on. The first one is looking at attendance, everything related to just like student attendance policies, and then student, any discipline policies that are in place. And it says policies, but it's also a practice review. So part of it will be not only looking at what's written down, right, in the actual policy itself, but having those follow-up focus groups to understand what does it look like in practice. We're looking at talent development, capacity building for all staff, and then we're looking at HR and hiring practices as well as staffing assignments. So that's part of phase 2. As I mentioned, we'll have focus groups. So the focus groups are really they come out as a result of phase 1. So as we shared in the site visits, there are multiple focus groups that are happening at each site as part of that process. But through our examination and reflection of the data that's gathered, we anticipate there will be key questions or areas that we need to dig into to kind of learn more. And we might want to start pressure testing or kind of exploring some possible recommendations and seeing kind of how those fit. So then phase 2 is where we would be convening focus groups for that portion as needed. The final part of phase 2 is really the process of processing all of the data information with the leadership. So reviewing the findings, clarifying what the key recommendations are. So what are we going to kind of focus in on from this? And then generating like, what are the key metrics and that we're going to monitor specifically around that are coming out of the equity audit. But we also will tend to how at that point to how are those kind of connected and aligned with the strategic plan. So it's not bifurcated. They come together. So that's phase 2. Phase 3, and then let's see, based on findings, there we go. Phase 3, there's a lot. I don't go into as much detail here on phase 3 because there's a lot to go into more detail in, and I can come back to do some more or share some follow-up. But the key pieces are coming out of that retreat. We're going to be digging into some research to really think about, based on our recommendations, how are we identifying and then implementing the best practices that we want to see supported in the system. We're going to be looking at what is a real progress monitoring tools that we can be using to see and measure at clear intervals that we're making steady progress towards the metrics that we identify. We'll be working with the district to think about the professional development plan and calendar that will support and undergird the system to ensure that there's both space, time, and purpose in the learning plan for the district. Then we also, as part of early implementation, and this is where the strategic plan and equity audit kind of come together. So we'll actually be working with each of the district departmental areas and domains for them to be developing their implementation plan for year 1. Based on the goals for the district and as part of the strategic plan and the equity audit. And we'll be working with all of the site leaders in their development of their improvement plan or their year-long plan for year 1. So those are kind of like the early implementation, and that's why it goes into September. It's sort of, we'll be doing it June and towards the end, just to make sure everyone is starting the year launch with a clear plan of what the focal points will be to work on. And then finally, there's a policy revision process that'll be with cabinet and then potentially also with board, depending on if they're board approved policies and so on and so forth. And so that's sort of to be determined, and the extent of that depending on the findings from the policy review. All right. I'll pause there and see for questions for phase 2 and phase 3.
Please go, Claudia. Director Andrews.
Lauren,
Hi.
so it seems to me that you're not going to be checking in with us again. It looks like you're going to be mostly working with the cabinet. Is that the case? I mean, I'm okay with that. I just wanted to just have some understanding of whether there'll be more check-in here.
I don't know that we've decided that, and if the
I
board
don't
would
think
like
we
a check-in,
decided.
we could, or an update, we could arrange for that. She's definitely
I'm not
working with
asking for one. I just wanted to kind of,
It
Yeah.
did also look like there was potentially some involvement at a retreat.
Yeah.
I wrote that down too. Lauren, do you have any idea when that might be?
We would want to be doing that towards the end of phase one. So we would need to look at, I mean, this is it's a wish list. So yeah, so we would look at when we could do that, if we can March or April. So we'd have to, nothing's calendared right at this point, and we're happy to provide updates. We will be kind of in the January through March timeframe. There's a lot of data gathering and the survey administration and those things. So there's not that much that besides just that those things are happening. And that's where it ends, with having some time, if possible, as a retreat. And it could be with the board, it could be with a select, if there's a subset of the board members plus the cabinet, whatever makes sense for you all.
Well,
We're
I'm all about
flexible.
calendaring, so once I cued in that.
Oh, I know, to get our calendar going,
Yeah,
James.
right.
I'm going to whine just for a minute. I mean, this whole strategic planning process is, from my perspective, pretty time intensive for board members, or I guess it doesn't have to be, but in some cases it is. So this is like, the calendaring issue right now is pretty critical for me, that's for sure.
Okay.
I
That's
want
good.
to echo that, because we also, in addition to strategic plan, we're going to start having monthly budget committee meetings. And so we're going to be really booked. But I do see this as important, and I don't know if there's a way around that. Could you go back to the first slide for phase 2?
Yes, ma'am. Let me get rid of your, there we go. Yes, I think it's this one, yes.
Thank you. There was something that jumped out at me. I remember what it was. One of the interesting things that I saw correlated in some data with student attendance and transportation. So we had noticed that Pleasant Valley has a really high, has one of the highest attendance rates, and they also have busing for all of their students. And so it would be interesting if there's a way to pull in some of those correlations there as well, to see if there's some equity recommendations.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for flagging that.
Yeah.
This might not be answerable at this particular moment, but several places right here in the one that you noted in policy and practice review. Our policies in this state are often dictated, if you will, by Oregon School Board Association, OSBA, to a degree. It's kind of like federal law versus state law. We can always add to what we want, but we also often have been looking for a nice word, chastise for that. So when we see things that are necessary to do, changes that we want to, facilitate and put in writing, because when you put it in writing, you're putting your stamp of approval and oftentimes your dollars behind it. What are we looking at as a district in terms of pulling that together and making a stand on something that may not be in our current policies as dictated by OSBA? That was snarky, if you weren't sure.
That's a big question.
We will think about that one. How about?
Conquer. Yeah, and part of it too, things that just to build on that, that's where we say the policy and practice, looking at, student handbooks, parent handbooks, things that help us understand how the policy gets implemented on the ground too. But yeah, that's a big question. Great.
I just to talk to Director Shields, I had the same, or your Vice Chair Shields now, right? it's hard to keep track. Anyway, I had the same thought when I saw this. It's like, okay, well, we're not going to be doing too much on the policies, I don't think. But it is I picked up on that, Lauren, when you said, how is it actually getting implemented, I guess, or is it getting implemented consistent with what we would expect? And that would be a piece that would be helpful. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Go ahead, Director Harden.
I think it would be wise of us to get some sort of information back on this, on the equity work before we pass the budget, because there could be some impacts that we see coming out of this data and collection that will impact our budget and our priorities as a district. So I think it'd be wise of us to at least get some information, whether it's a formal report, some sort of information to the budget committee, so that we can, any red flags, so that those can be addressed before the budget's passed.
Great.
Director Harden, it might be a question also for Director Southerton. I think we're going to need the final date. You know, you can take up to this amount of time to deliberate, but it's got to be in front of the board and it's got to be voted on by X date. But to give us as much time, maybe as much time as possible with these kind of gray areas they're gray areas for us now that we would like to then solidify by monetary support. How much time will the board have in doing that before you're required to do it by whatever the rules are?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great question. So we're working in tandem with the process as well as we can. So identify the priorities that are being identified as part of the strategic planning is being conveyed to the administration, principals, schools, that our budget priorities will align with strategic planning. And not wanting to take away agency from the board or from the budget committee, it's our intent at the work session next week to also introduce the fact that we're doing strategic planning. We've introduced that already via email. You all in the budget committee received the invitation, and we had a good participation. I think out of 14 members, I think we had 6 or 7 that attended the community engagement group at Centennial Middle School this week of the budget committee. So it's absolutely happening in tandem and side by side with the process. So that's the intent. Now, under Oregon budget law, we do need to adopt a budget by June 30th. So there may be some refinement that goes into the budget. And you'll recall, Vice Chair Shields, that when you adopt a budget, you're adopting into categories: instruction, support services, right? We provide the budget book for a breakdown of those categories, but the actual resolution is by major function. So the board and the administration does have the latitude to respond a little bit within those categories and within that resolution. That's a little bit of in the weeds, and I'm happy to discuss that more at the budget committee, but we will have the operational freedom as long as we're working within the guardrails, if you will, of what the board has adopted, to adjust as we need to based on the findings and the direction of the board with the budget.
We assume nothing about state funding until signed out, correct?
We have to make assumptions because we will likely adopt a budget before the legislature formally approves the state school fund. In past bienniums, it has occurred well into July, well into August. And so we work with the forecast, we work with COSA, we work with OSBA, we work with the legislature and our partners, right, to get an estimate of our expected funding. And we build a conservative estimate so that we're not having to do mid-year cuts should funding come in much less than what we're forecasting. Does that help?
Yes, it's just always that balance, isn't it? And timing, as you were saying, Director Harden.
Yes, and just for the record, I looked up on the calendar, the second budget committee meeting is May 17th. And that's the one that's, public forum, like, you guys good? Everybody all right? So, be good to get some information.
And then it goes before the board for consideration and adoption in June. So just providing us ample opportunity to revise if needed between May and June, and then still approving in plenty of time before the deadline.
Thank you. Excellent.
All right. Well, are there any other questions about the equity audit or process? Wonderful. Thank you for
so
your
much,
time.
Dr.
Thank you,
Kasuda.
Lauren. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Have
Lauren.
a great evening.
Thank
And
you.
Lauren, you may want to consider, I know you're pushing 11 o'clock on the East Coast there, but I have a report coming up and I'm going to reference some of the strategic planning that has been happening. So
I'll stick around. If
you
it's a
may
personal
wanna-
invitation,
You
I'll
may want to
stick
hear what I
around.
say and fact check me, or you may want to hear how the board responds to what I say, more
Oh,
importantly.
yeah, I'll stick around. Thanks.
Yeah, she flew cross country today. She was here yesterday.
Excellent. Next up, we have Superintendent Owens with your superintendent report.
Great. Thank you, Chair Slavsky. All right. Starting with the CMS OMS basketball game. First ever. Last Thursday evening was the first boys basketball game between Centennial Middle School and Oliver Middle School. The anticipated crowd was expected to be larger than the space available at Oliver Middle School, so the game was moved to Centennial High School. CMS won both the 7th and 8th grade games, with Oliver Middle School, I understand, coming back from a 20-point deficit in the 8th grade game to take a late lead before falling short with a last-second CMS shot. I had a chance to talk with both principals of CMS and OMS on Friday, the day after the game, and they were each glowing with the excitement and the memories that were created with that. So kudos to the board for the work that they've done to establish Oliver as a middle school, and then the reinstatement of middle school sports as well has led to the picture that you see there. After a pause during winter break, strategic planning is back in full force with a variety of stakeholder engagement opportunities and a lot of positive energy and momentum. The primary aim between these engagement opportunities is to align all stakeholders on a shared vision, common goals, and unified direction for our district's educational efforts for the next 4 years. Community-wide involvement is vital to the strategic planning process. Therefore, we're designing the process in ways that will embrace the diverse voices of our district stakeholders. I'll take a moment to share about the engagement activities that have happened this past week. Last Thursday evening, the second of 3 alignment team meetings took place. As a reminder, the alignment team is composed of community leaders, leaders from higher education, community-based organizations, government entities, or as Lauren likes to say, the movers and shakers of the community. The team aligns all stakeholders on a shared vision, common goals, and a unified direction for the district's educational efforts. The alignment team has had representation from the following organizations, with representatives attending for the first time noted in blue. Hopefully you can see. I won't read these, but as you can see, there was robust attendance and representation from a variety of community partners. At Thursday's meeting, and Chair Solowski, you might want to see if you can spot some of these new folks from your work as well. At Thursday's meeting, the alignment team reviewed selected student data, discussed areas of strength and need, contributed to the portrait of a graduate, and reviewed draft goals and measures for success. It was great to see, it was great to see Directors Harden and Lynn at the meeting, as well as former Board Chair Shargiard, who you saw with the Food for Families update, and also, if you see in the picture, you see former Superintendent Dr. Paul Coakley in attendance as well. The alignment team meets for one more meeting in early February. On Monday, a couple days ago, at Centennial Middle School Library, we held the first of 2 family and community forums. Approximately 70 people took part in the forum, where participants were provided an overview of the process and had the opportunity to contribute ideas to the graduate profile, as well as goals and measures of student success. It was good to see Directors Harden and Lynn, as well as Vice Chair Shields and Chair Solowski there participating alongside families and community members. A second virtual forum is scheduled for Monday, January 30th. More information will be publicized about this opportunity here shortly. The student voice teams convened yesterday. I say teams because based upon student feedback from those participating, it was decided that the middle and high school students wanted to meet in level-specific venues rather than continuing to meet together. As a reminder, the student voice team provides and ensures that the focus and attention with the planning are centered on the student experience. I asked Director Callahan for a report I could share about how that went, and obviously you can really see that because it's small, sorry, but I'll read it to you. And this is what I received. There were 13 students who participated in the student voice team from the high school level. There were 11 who participated from the middle school team. In small groups, students sorted and prioritized student goals by consensus. The highest frequency scores were for leadership, social emotional development, health and well-being, safety, connection, and inclusion. The second highest frequency was for equitable, supportive environments and persistence to high school graduation. Once the student groups were clear on the task, there was high engagement among the student groups, and one middle school student was expecting to see the superintendent as he had things he wanted him to know about the middle school needs. So unfortunately, I did not attend the middle school student voice team, and then I heard about it afterwards. But that feedback was taken, and I will be sure to review it. Last evening, the core planning team met at the Centennial Middle School Library. The core planning team shepherds the process from beginning to end, maintaining focus, direction, and productivity for the strategic planning process. The committee inspires vision and strategic action. At last night's meeting, we reviewed the graduate profile and draft goals with stakeholder group feedback incorporated, including from the Family and Community Forum that had happened the night before, and then we began dialogue about the pillars for the plan. If you are thinking about what the pillars would be, if you look at the poster over on the wall, you can see those 4 categories that are established for our current plan. That would be the idea for as far as pillars or categories. It's been a busy week for Directors Lynn, Hardin, and Chair Solowski as they've hung in there for the last 3 evenings, including this one. In addition to the alignment team for Directors Lynn and Hardin last Thursday, it was also great to have Director Andrews present for the core planning team last night as well. I have a few more topics to share about that are not strategic planning related, but I wanted to stop there for a moment to allow any of the directors to share about their experience or to ask questions for those of us that have been attending if you haven't been attending or weren't at one of the particular meetings, so I'll stop at this point.
I had a question about the student focus. The middle school students, which middle school was it? It was both. Okay, cool. Good answer. Right on.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
For the community forum, we had sign-up sheets. What happens with those sign-up sheets? And the reason why I ask is these are people that showed up and wanted to engage. And for those of us who had the opportunity to be there, my table was very engaged and talking and had lots of good ideas and thoughts. And I kept looking, I'm going, well, why aren't you on the budget committee? And why aren't you, I'm thinking about these people as they're speaking. I'm thinking, these are wonderful, parents that contribute so much to their school, maybe as well as for their student. But how do we broaden their interests in serving? So I just want to know, how do we get those names?
Yeah, that's good. And I would say at the least, Lauren and I talked yesterday about recognizing those who participated by having individual specific outreach to recognize the fact that they took time out of their evening and showed up and participated and did something that is, maybe outside of the comfort zone or regular routine.
That's good. Really good.
Yeah, the comment that I wanted to make was just really kudos to you and your team, the communication, really the level of engagement, specifically the number of families that showed up blew me away. So really great outreach, great work getting them in here. Thank you all.
I think Lauren may still be on the phone, but I did have a minute and talked with her last night, and she mentioned that the attendance, not only at the community forum, but at all of the different team meetings, is really exceptional. And the kudos for all of it goes to staff, and you have done just a fantastic job getting involvement. She said better involvement than larger school districts. So, if she hasn't told you all that yet, she has told some of us, and that really is thanks to everything that you have done to generate interest in this.
Yeah, and kudos to the not only our team and our cabinet, but also the school level. We have a lot of tasks that we're pushing over to the schools in terms of promotion, because that's a trusted source of information, and that's a place where a lot of parents want to hear messages from. And so when I say schools, I mean not only the administrators and the office staff, but also teachers and other staff doing specific outreach as well. So there was an intentional engagement plan, and I'm glad to see that it worked out to have better than normal turnout.
If I could just make one comment as well. When we started this process, we were very intentional about spending time around the community and bringing in a diverse group of people, and really how do we foster that. And so for me, this week has been super exciting to see what is possible, not just for this week, but beyond. So I think it's a great exemplar of what we can, and potential of what we can do over time. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Any thoughts or feedback from the board about the process to date?
I was going to make a joke about the pillars, but after last night, but can we combine them? How many pillars do we get to have?
Too soon.
Sorry.
Too soon.
Insert groan. Okay, continue, please.
Insert groan. That's good. Thanks, Lauren. I think you may be safe at this point to
Okay, thanks.
get on with your evening. Thank you. As I mentioned in my weekly communication last week, I received word from Safe Routes to School that the Bureau of Transportation, or PBOT, sidewalk infill project has been recommended to be awarded through the Oregon Department of Transportation, sorry, I'm so used to saying education, let me say that again, Oregon Department of Transportation, or ODOT, Safe Routes Construction Grant. In January, the Oregon Transportation Committee will vote, and they typically pass the Safe Routes Committee recommendation. So it's not a done deal, but it is at a critical stage to move forward. And if you have driven through the 174th corridor or worked there, as Mr. Principal Miller has done, that with all of the construction in Happy Valley and limited routes from south to north, that's a highly trafficated corridor with not a lot of safety in terms of sidewalks or lighting. So that corridor enhancement is going to be a much needed safety improvement for our community.
Will it not only include sidewalks, but lighting as well?
I am not sure about that aspect.
No worries.
I can check on that.
So is it just sidewalks, or are they widening 174th as well?
Let
or
me
is
get
it just-
project specifics
Okay.
and share it with
We're
the
just
board.
really excited. This is huge for those communities. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't finish my comments there. The project is for sidewalk infill and crossing improvements on Southeast 174th from Kelly to Francis. These improvements will benefit Powell Butte, Centennial Middle School, and Centennial High School students, and any community members that go across that route too. It's been a while since there's been a COVID-19 update, so I wanted to take the opportunity to provide a reminder that we still use the CDC levels to determine risk level for community transmission. Since fall, the CDC level has been low, with the exception of 1 week during winter break when the level rose to medium for a week. As a reminder, at the low level, there is no face covering recommendation. At medium, masks are recommended, but not required. And at the high level, masks will be required in district facilities. And you heard that reference when you heard the summer school report about how we started summer school because there was a peak at that point. I mention this now so it will not be a surprise when we get to this point, and in case the board has any comment on this continued practice. One of the ways that we advertise that or promote that, or however you say, is that on each door for the district facility, the main door, there's a plastic sheath and it has the level, green, yellow, or orange, and so that's just a constant reminder of what level we're at. Putting that stake in the ground right now, and we'll also share that in the Friday superintendent's update for the community. Also, I mentioned in my weekly communication, and you heard Assistant Principal Scully talk about the partnership with All Hands Raised. In our continued partnership with them, we've reserved a table at this year's Party with a Purpose, which will be back in person on the floor of the Moda Center on Thursday, February 16th at 6 p.m. Our table has 8 seats, which provides enough seats for you and me to attend. And if you plan to attend, let Missy know by Tuesday, January 17th, or tonight when you see her on the way out. And then finally, and we talked about this during the last report, finally next week is the Budget Committee work session, and we will have a discussion of priorities. At that meeting, we will discuss the financial outlook and the status of budget priorities, which we want to ensure are in alignment with the strategic planning process that we're engaged with. It's important that we're not working on the Budget Committee in a silo over here with priorities that are not connected to and married to the work that we're going through as a strategic planning process. So I will invite any questions or comments you have about these topics, and that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Owens. The budget committees, are those all virtual? Yes. Thank you. Other things, please?
We're not changing anything in terms of our CDC following of masking, which, right, I get that. The communication part, though, if this newest variant, pops, are you looking at, I found out today that that's popped, and so tomorrow we're going to tell everybody to wear masks? Or do we have a plan of how do you, when you see it move, what, do you do it like next Monday?
Yeah, so the way it works, the way that we have the internally processed our system is that, and I don't like a lot of systems to be superintendent dependent, but what I do is that the levels are updated no later than 5 p.m. on Thursdays, and it's every Thursday. And so I check after 5 p.m. what the level is and see that it's, still low as it's been a lot of the fall, or it's elevated. And if it is elevated, then I work with Missy and we communicate to each of the schools to transition their little poster that says the color. And then I send a district-wide email out saying that the level has, gone from this to this, and here's the protocol for when that happens. And that's, the intention is that's done by 10 o'clock the next day, 10 a.m. the next day.
When you send out that district-wide email, is it just to district staff or is it to families as well?
It's the district staff, and then Chief Rosales Correa also does an updates message from the updates account that's reflective of the same information.
Thank you.
A little out of practice because we just haven't had to communicate because the level's been low the whole time. But yes, that's the practice, so thanks for asking about it.
Excellent. Next, if we could add, let's see here, who's up on the agenda? Chris Dow, our OSCA president, if you could bring them to the panel. And I would like to make a correction that I did hear that the macaroons were from OSEA. And so, thank you. They are absolutely delicious. Super sweet. Yeah, so at this point, let's welcome OSCA President Chris Dahl to share an OSCA update.
Hi, thank you. I'm glad you like them. I personally can't eat them, but I've heard they're amazing, so I hope you enjoy. Happy New Year. I hope that our school board members were able to enjoy our small token of appreciation. We want to, again, express gratitude for approving last month's MOU. Although it does not solve our long-term issues regarding wages, we are hopeful that those that it impacted are feeling it. Also, on a side note, I loved the Food for Families report. It actually is the first time I had heard the whole story, and oh my goodness, I've always loved the program. I have served students that it has impacted positively, but it was nice to kind of have the whole story. I've been with the district for 10 years, and I am filled with more hope than ever. I am loving the work that we are doing with strategic planning. My heart project has always been student voice, and the way in which we are systematically implementing student voice is powerful. Don't get me wrong, we have work to do. We have serious hard work to do, but I'm really excited about it. We operationally are still feeling the staffing shortage. I am hoping that as we are able to address issues in various ways, people will feel more supported and stay. I feel, and I'm hoping that we're able with ages to hopefully be able to attract a few more people. Overall though, like, Happy New Year. I'm excited about the 174th thing. That was, as the attendance specialist who served Powell Butte Elementary, 174th is the bane of my existence. So I'm really excited about that. I agree with Director Harden regarding budgeting and making sure that we are able to have that timing situation work out well. I am looking forward to the work groups that we are establishing as a way to address operational needs with our staff members. And I'm really looking forward to the implementation of support for our colleagues of color as we do this work. I really want to make sure that our staff of color are feeling supported and not burdened with this work. That's it. Happy New Year. I'm excited to continue the work.
Thank you so much. Next, we welcome CEA President Amanda Kassab. If we could get Amanda out as a panelist, fantastic. Please go ahead and share a CEA update.
Good evening, esteemed board members and CSD cabinet. It's nice to see you all, and I hope 2023 has had a great start for each of you. Overall, CEA members are happy to be back in our buildings, working with students and doing what we love. Each of us appreciate the negotiations and time that it took to come to an agreement on the COVID MOU. Thank you for passing this MOU tonight. One thing I would like to bring to light tonight is the low morale that is present in Centennial School District. We all want Centennial to be a destination district. However, many systems and procedures that are in place seem to hinder relationship building between district administration and CSD staff. Therefore, we are looking forward to the upcoming equity audit and hope that it will highlight the areas in our systems, procedures, and work environment where supremacy culture is impacting our shared goal of student learning. Recently, communication between myself and CSD administration has been open and promising. I appreciate Superintendent Owens, HR Director Dr. Katsuda, and Curriculum and Instruction Director Callahan taking time to engage with me in impromptu conversations. While I appreciate this privilege of open door communication style, not all of my peers benefit from the same. And so I'm hoping that together we can identify barriers that are making staff feel that the district administration is not accessible and brainstorm ways to eliminate those barriers. Thank you very much for your time this evening and all the work that you do. It is a thankless job and we do appreciate it. With the upcoming school board elections, if you're interested in pursuing a Centennial EA endorsement, let me know and I can get you in touch with Alicia Brown, who is heading up our endorsement committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate that. At this point in time, we're going to take a short break. Let's break for 10, 13 minutes. Let's break for 13 minutes. I like nice even numbers when we come back. We will be, what is that then? 8:25. Thank you so much. I love you. All right, 8:26. This board meeting is called back to order. Next up, we have confirmation items. We will be confirming these items en masse.
I move that we approve the confirmation items as listed.
Second.
It is moved and seconded that we approve the confirmation items. Can I, let's see, raise your hand and say aye? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And those abstained? Excellent. You'll note that we have 6-4, 1 abstained. The confirmation items have passed. Really excited just to see some of those travel things happening for the students in there. I just want to call attention to that. That's going to be some really great stuff. All right, coming up next, we've got some old business. We've got a resolution. Yes, welcome. Is it this point where I read the resolution, or do you want to do, how do we do this?
Great question, Chair Slawski. We don't typically read it. It's there for the public and it's there for the board to read. I will read the board note that accompanies that resolution, and then, of course, if there's any questions,
fantastic,
we welcome those. So thank you all for allowing me to be here tonight. So you will recall that we received a grant from Portland General Electric for an electric school bus. So very exciting to have a low admission, very quiet school bus, and also encouraging green energy. So that grant covers the delta, or the difference between a traditional school bus and which would be diesel or gas powered, and the electric bus. So it's about $250,000 difference for that bus. And that's for a full-size 80 capacity large travel bus. So before you for tonight for your consideration is passing a resolution that provides Superintendent Owens and myself authorization to engage in the purchase of that bus and any financing requirements for the remainder of the funds or the purchase price that's not covered by the grants. So it's recommended that you all authorize Superintendent Owens and I to purchase one electric school bus not to exceed $450,000 and grant us permission to enter in all necessary paperwork and documents to purchase the bus and any financing required for that bus. Welcome any questions you have.
Questions. This is because this, my understanding, the $200,000 in addition to PGE's grant that the district was awarded covers things that the grant doesn't. I was not here when that was slotted into the budget from the Transportation District Fund, so I've got some questions. I'll try not to belabor anything. So I'm wondering, does the district intend to pursue a long-term strategy of electrifying the entire fleet? Is that the ultimate goal, or is this a one-off, or somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. The district has not adopted formally a policy to transition our fleet to electric, but the district has welcomed the opportunity to participate in grant programs which facilitates our doing so and offsets the cost of our doing so for several reasons. The buses are quieter for our students, and they obviously have less pollution as an electric bus. They're also proving very reliable. They're also very durable, that they've lasted for many years in the Beaverton School District is what the feedback we've received. Secondly, by offsetting the cost, there's no additional cost to the district to go to electrification, and we save the cost of fuel versus the charging. And we have a payback information that I'm happy to share with you on that delta. But in the long run, it is cheaper than traditional gas and diesel. And especially, we all know that taxes and prices fluctuate with gas and diesel, whereas we have more reliability with the prices that were being offered from PGE on electricity.
Has there been any consideration given to alternate models, modes, alternative to traditional diesel? Just three that came to my mind: hybrid, LNG, or renewable or biodiesel that some kind calls. There may be consideration of those modes.
Absolutely, and it's an excellent question. I'm glad you asked. We actually offer diesel, gasoline, and clean propane in our fleet right now. Our most recent purchase prior to this was through 2 grants that were administered by DEQ, the Department of Environmental Quality, and they were funded by the VW settlement grant, which you may recall some years ago, and then another program called DARA. They offset the difference between what the state reimburses for purchasing transportation equipment and our price. So the state typically reimburses 70% of the purchase price of a vehicle over 10 years. And so DARA provided 25%, I believe, and the VW provided 30% of the cost.
Just clarifying for a moment, was that the settlement over the controversy with VW fudging the EPA test results?
I'm a little bit out of my lane, but I will say I believe that is the case.
Okay, that's the one major one I remember about them in recent years. There's a couple of things that, and I don't say this to be critical of the district, your work, or anybody else's, but the things I hear with electric is the upfront cost compared to a traditional diesel bus is quite a bit more, hence the PGE grant. Also, there's a concern with the range. It may not be such an issue with Centennial. We're kind of a compact district, but the range with the current charging range is somewhat limited, is an objection I hear. I'm glad you addressed the issue of reliability, because that's always, but you have to, sometimes you have to take internet things with a grain of salt. Some people say, hey, they're great, or they're not reliable in cold weather, and you get this back and forth. So the thing, I guess, if we're moving toward alternate modes, will the district have resources down the line to say if we choose to go EV or some combination of the words, construction of charging stations, that type of things, equipment to house an electrified fleet? I looked up quickly. I can't attest to it 100%, but I believe with the PGE, the school bus page about the grant program, that there's also resources available for construction of the charging stations, because they're going to need that if we go to more than just one bus, that's going to be needed as well.
Absolutely, and if you'd like me to speak to that, I can let you know that we are partnering with PGE to work in their fleet program to defer or offset. They pay a large part of the cost of bringing in the power and the charging stations. Our current estimate is about $16,000 would be our cost, which is considerably less than what it costs to bring in the line, bring in the transformers, bring in the charging stations right now for this bus. And it scales with that same line they're bringing in up to 5 buses based on what they're doing right now. So that's 4 additional buses without needing additional infrastructure beyond just a charger, which is a lower cost when you've got all the line and power and everything.
And just an interesting aside, this is almost coincidental, have the radio news on, is that one of the other winners of this grant, Beaverton School District, speaking with one of their transportation directors, they have virtually at this point converted the entire fleet to bio or renewable diesel. And they didn't say they were cutting out electric, and other things are in consideration too, but I think it's interesting that they moved toward that first. And I just, I know there's some drawbacks to that as well, likely, but the cost of fuel, as more districts get onto that, it might drive that up as an alternate to EV. I'm just wondering if Centennial is prepared to take a serious look at bio or renewable diesel with the push to get off of fossil fuel and get on to, you know, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a transportation expert, but it seems to me if you're using biorenewable, that's mostly recaptured vegetable. I mean, it's plant-based oil. I mean, you follow TriMet lift, anecdotally, to me it smells like a big French fry fryer when you swallow one. It really does. And so that would indicate to me that there's something to it. So just wondering if these things evolve. I'm just backgrounding myself basically because, like I say, I was not here when the grant was applied for and won, and the money slotted. I just want to make sure that we're making good use of all the resources, because we're coming up. There's been some concerns expressed over the budget in general that we might possibly be looking at a shortfall with school districts statewide, not just Centennial. So that's my reason for all these questions, bringing these things out.
They're excellent questions, and I appreciate them very much. If I may, what I would offer is that we subscribe to that it will be an iterative process. It will transform over many years, and we welcome the opportunity to have discussions and research opportunities that are made available or afforded to us, whether they be biodiesel, they be propane, they be electric. You know, we're very much exploring that. What we're not exploring is the status quo, you know, and if that makes sense.
fair enough. Thank you, Director Sutherland.
Other questions? Good.
Motion to adopt the resolution.
It's moved and seconded that we adopt the resolution of the Board of the Directors of authorizing the purchase and financing of one electric school bus by the Director of Business and Operations. Are we ready for the vote? Anything come up? Great. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous vote. Congratulations. We are gonna buy a bus. Let's see here. Well, look who it is. It's Director Sutherton again.
Thank you, Chair Solowski. So before you now for consideration is the approval of the award of the CHS Athletics Upgrades Complex Project CMGC contract to Emmerich Construction. You may say that that name sounds familiar. Emmerich Construction has successfully completed 2 projects for us with the bond right now, and they bid on this project to be a construction manager, general contractor for the sports complex. So just a little reminder of what CMGC is. When we use the CMGC process, that's because it's a more complex project. Timing is critical, and there's value to be added by having a contractor on board early in the process to help us with the design, the feasibility, the scheduling, when we're trying to pull off a very complex project, short amount of time, many trades, many different parts. You'll notice from the board note that we engaged in an open solicitation process. We had 8 general contractors download the solicitation proposal. We had 3 general contractors attend the mandatory pre-bid proposal. And we had 2 general contractors ultimately submit proposals to be our CMGC for this project. Proposals were scored, interviews were conducted to seek information on their references, to seek information on their qualifications, to hear about their past projects. Ultimately, those were scored, and Emmerich Company was unanimously selected by the District Review Committee. We do recommend that the Board of Directors approves the award of the CMGC services contract to the CHS Athletic Upgrades to Emmerich Construction Company. I welcome any questions you may have.
Questions? Hearing none.
Motion to adopt contractor.
All those in favor of adopting the Emmerich as the CMGC, if I got those right, hopefully, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Next up, oh, fantastic. We are going to be looking at the second reading of the local wellness policy. Welcome, Director Sutherton.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been so long.
It's been a long time.
All right. Well, thank you for having me back again to discuss policy EFA and the AR associated with policy EFA. So you'll recall from the previous board meeting and from our email correspondence that OSBA is recommending an update to the policy EFA or local wellness. So they do this periodically because of changes in reviews. They're also this time recommending the deletion of the AR with the adoption of updated policy of EFA, which is something different. They've taken the EFA policy and the AR and kind of blended those together so it's now in a single document, which is great for users, for the public, for our community, for our staff, all to kind of have a single document that ties with the key requirements. I've highlighted some of the changes and called those out both at our previous meeting and now again in the board note. So you'll see on page 2 that we establish the principals will ensure compliance with their schools with the policy. This is a current practice, but now it's explicit. Defining the wellness committee and specific advisory members and adding an annual report which will be made available to the public and published on our website. We do currently have a wellness committee, the WOW committee. It's fantastic. We have wonderful members of our team operating that committee. This now further builds it out and says some additional stakeholders will be a part of that committee as well. It also establishes that the WOW committee or the committee will post an annual report on our website. So our staff, our students, our community members, our families can kind of see what they're doing and the findings of that committee. Page 4 is just details around nutritional education that will be provided to students. And then page 6, you'll note that it ensures water is provided at all meal periods free of charge as a beverage option. And it's unflavored, unsweetened, non-sparkling. We'll also avoid bottled water to the extent possible. And then page 6 further allows, you'll notice, an exception for celebrations and fundraisers to the local wellness policy. And that was the feedback from the board as well as others. And so that does require the approval for fundraisers, at least, the approval of the principal and the director of dining services. So we want to still make sure that's in alignment with the spirit of the board and the spirit of the policy, right? And there are some kind of balances that are happening. We're not having, I don't know, for lack of a better term, fast food served right outside during the cafeteria every single lunch, right? But maybe there's a fundraiser where they're selling pepperoni sticks for a baseball team, right? Or they're selling a candy bar for a band trip or something like that. There's logical exceptions, if that makes sense. And I welcome any questions you have. It is recommended by the administration that the board updates the new policy as written, and we recommend the deletion of the associated AR.
Thank you for all your time and work on this policy. I really appreciate it. Questions?
Not so much a question, but to echo the chair, the extra time to really look it over, because in our last meeting, it was just so much and so different, this approach, but support the approach and appreciate the delineation in the board note, because that helped me hone in on where some of our concerns and questions were. So it was kind of like, okay, I'm getting it now, and it felt better. And I appreciate board members who obviously participated in feedback of completing the loop that I think that we were kind of missing at our last meeting. So kudos. It feels really good to be able to say yes to this policy now.
Yep.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the engagement, the thought that went into this by the board members and others. So thank you very much for asking those questions and having that engagement, allowing us the opportunity to have a good policy for our district.
Anything else? Please.
Motion to approve the local wellness policy.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Another unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Was that movie where you drag the chair with you behind you? No. Excellent. Let us go ahead and move on to new business. This is exciting. CEA COVID-19 paid leave for the school year, MOU. Dr. Katsuda.
All right. It's recommended that the board approve the MOU regarding the COVID-19 paid leave for the 2022-23 school year between the Centennial Education Association and the district.
Are there any questions? Excellent. Hearing none, if I could get a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the COVID-19 paid leave MOU.
Second.
So close. I wanted to try. Great. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Another unanimous vote. Dr. Katsuda, again with the equity audit contract.
If you have all the pertinent documents there, it's recommended that the board approve the award of the comprehensive equity audit contract to Performance Fact Incorporated.
Questions?
It's nothing to do with this, but how did we find Performance Fact Incorporated? Just out of curiosity, because we've been working close with them the last while.
We actually had reached out to a number of organizations in this area and discovered Performance Fact through the strategic planning process, and then in working with them explored other services they provided in the equity audit, and the rigor of their equity audit elevated them as a...
We also asked our administrators, because we have many administrators who've worked elsewhere, and Principal Miller and then Cassie Swenson, who you worked with previously, both worked in Federal Way, Washington, for the school district there, much larger district, and they had used Performance Fact and both had really good things to say, and so we solicited recommendations from our admin team to see who we might want to reach out to vet. So that was a good question.
Thank you.
Other questions? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the equity audit contract with Performance Fact Incorporated.
It's been moved and seconded that we award Performance Fact the equity audit contract. So all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, and it's really great because with all this work having to happen concurrently with the strategic plan and the equity audit and all of that, it's really great that it's the same group. Excellent. Next up, we've got first read of policies JHFE, GBNAB, and the similar AR.
Good evening, board members, and again, congratulations and thank you for all the work that you do. We appreciate you so much. Dr. Katsuya and I are co-presenting this policy. As you see, it has a student and a staff number assigned to it. We have had this policy in place for several years. The last time it was adopted and reconsidered was last January of 2022. The reason we're bringing it to you all now is that there were recent revisions with the 2021 legislation. They've added some additional pieces, some additional definitions, and you can also see that because of the requirement with staff involved, the second code has been added, and this is a policy and AR that are both required. Something that we have included in the copy that you all have is if there are strike-throughs, we've aligned that with the language that has been in our policy, so such as whether it's a may versus shall, we kept that in alignment so that you can see what's currently in and what we're continuing to recommend.
Questions on this? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I had sent some questions to Superintendent Owens and Chair Solosky. I had some concerns and just hopefully maybe in addition to make it very clear that when we have a case like this, it is reported to the Teacher Standards and Practices Commission, ODE, and we have people who are not licensed by TSPC in the schools as well, and making sure that they are reported to their respective licensing boards, because we often hear of people who abuse going other places, and even though there's complaints and things on their records there, they just go far enough away so that they can hide their record. And so I want to make sure that these sorts of things follow them and people are aware of who they're hiring.
Yeah, that's important comment. We have it already included in policy GBNAA /JHFF, the AR, and as Oregon Revised Statute 339 was passed in recognition that sexual abuse is identified as a type of abuse by Oregon law. That is encompassed in that particular policy, which is focused on sexual conduct, which requires us to report any person who's licensed by TSPC, or make any reports to them, and the reports to ODE for staff who aren't given a license or awarded a license by TSPC. So it's part of our existing policy already.
I don't know if I trust ODE to close the loop there with the licensing boards. So
yeah, but it's for classified
it would be
employees.
nice to say it explicitly in the policy that it will be sent to the licensing boards as well.
It is in policy GB and AA.
I don't know if you saw, because I appreciate the question, Director Lynn. I had sent back a preliminary response to your question. Were you able to see that?
Yeah, I was reading it before the thing. I saw that there was a related thing, and then I thought that this was kind of something that was implied but not explicit.
I think a couple things. Number one, I think we should research what you're asking, because I think you bring up a good point. The distinction, as I see it, is this, is that with this particular policy, it talks about suspected abuse of a child, not substantiated, but suspected. And so in that case, when we're talking about the sexual conduct policy that was just referenced, that's very specifically called out that that sort of behavior is immediately reported to the licensing bureaus, TSBC for licensed and ODE if it's an unlicensed individual who's affiliated with the school district. That's on report, not on substantiation. In this particular policy, we're talking about suspected abuse of a child. We're not talking about sexual abuse, and that would trigger the other policy that we have. So we're talking about any suspected abuse of a child. And so when we have a situation like that, in practice, what we're doing in human resources specifically is contacting the licensing bureau directly and asking about our reporting requirements so that we're clear on when and what substantiation is needed on our end to warrant a report. That's not to say that it shouldn't be considered for our policy, and I think that that's something that we should follow up with OSBA about. And I also want to make sure that we're not inadvertently creating issues, particularly for our staff who are maybe accused of something but aren't substantiated that that has actually happened, because our mandatory reporting requirements are pretty broad in terms of what we need to report. But we wouldn't not necessarily want to trigger an investigation outside of our internal processes beyond our mandatory reporting requirements, just based on policy. So that would be something that we would want to look into. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Along those lines, it's interesting that they're starting to use footnotes, as in duh. But I think it's also in terms of Director Lynn's, bringing up the concern and Superintendent Owen's clarification, there's no problem with us putting in our own footnotes and further referencing so that you know to go, that there's someplace else that it's discussed, and that it's not an oversight. It's like, oh, it doesn't, and for more information about, at least have it in the policy to point people in the right direction instead of everybody doing a word search to try to figure out all the policies that might have those words in it. So, if whatever we can do to help people make it a readable document and put it in the right context, as both individuals have mentioned. I don't know if that ties us up from, doing something tonight on it, and I don't know what the recommendation of the chair is going to be as it relates to, we do have a first read, we do have an option to approve. I don't know, like, oh my gosh, do you have to have it already approved? But whatever leeway we need, with at least with a recognition that this is going to be handled.
Yes.
Then I guess with that kind of assurance, I don't have a problem saying yes, approved. But if there's any other issues or concerns, if it's just a matter of getting that clarification and bringing it back to us at our next meeting.
And it
but I
could
don't
be
know
a
what the
call out
timeline is.
specifically in reference to the footnote to ORS 3, is it 339 or 393? 339, which specifically outlines that requirement that was referenced by Director Lynn. So it might just be an added note within our policy. Yeah.
And you can see that at the bottom of the page of the policy under legal references. It lists it there, and then we could just have an additional piece that connects it with the policy.
Point back to us, right?
One of the things I'm curious, and we don't necessarily need to get into this here, but I'd love to hear more about what happens if it's a student claiming that another student has been the perpetrator. How is that handled, and how is the communication, given that you're dealing with both sides?
So there's a couple pieces that are taken into consideration and processes. So we, DHS reports are completed. We also look at our internal process around our sexual incident response. And part of that is looking at the age of students. Are they within, 2 kindergartners? And did something happen? Or is this a 6th grader and a kindergartner? As a part of that process, we also have to look at if one of the students experiences disability. So all of those factors are taken into consideration as a part of that process also.
I would add, as part of Title IX and a number of other processes, we immediately work with students to stop whatever behavior is happening to safeguard students.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions? If we could go around and maybe just see if people are ready to move forward this evening, or if you would like a little more time. And I'll go around the room, starting with you, Director Harden.
I'm okay as long as everyone else's needs are met. Like, if it sounds like there's some concerns or some things that we need to put in the policy, and I just want to assure that that's going to happen before we're saying, yes, this is the new policy. But I don't want to hold things up if there's deadlines and timelines and things like that. But I do think it's important that any questions are addressed and everyone is comfortable with it, so.
Thank you. Director Andrews.
I'd rather wait.
Okay.
Until we get those little issues ironed out, whether it's going to be a reference to another policy or whatever.
Great. Director Stanley.
I'm very familiar with these types of policies, so I'm fine with moving on tonight.
Okay. Director Gregory.
I would like to take Superintendent Owen's recommendation. I'd like some more research. I would prefer to wait on this one.
Great. Director Lynn?
I'd like a second read.
Okay. Second reads have it.
So just for clarification for Dr. Kutsuda and I, looking to have that connection with the other policy is really what we're looking for. Any additional clarification besides that?
Was there anything you needed to check with OSBA? You'd referenced that at some point. That's what I was concerned about. Okay. Yeah.
Was there a desire to explore the legality or feasibility of triggered ODE TSBC report upon suspicion of child abuse that triggers a DHS report by our staff if it's an employee? I just want to make sure we're clear on that part.
Isn't that an AR? I mean, I see the policy as policy, and the AR is the process that we use related to the policy. So for me, that kind of clarification I think is good, but I don't see it as necessary in the policy, but good information to include in the AR on the first.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Or
Go ahead if you.
So are you saying that instead of waiting until something is confirmed, like what confirmed, which is what we have now, we're doing it when there's a suspected?
I want to be clear, I'm not suggesting that. I'm wanting to make sure to clarify Director Lynn's interest, because that is the way that the sexual abuse policy functions. That is not the way that this policy would function as it is proposed, correct? But I was wondering if Director Lynn had an interest of exploring a similarity between the sexual abuse policy and this one and incorporating an additional element of ODE or TSPC report.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss this more with you, but yes. And then I also wouldn't mind hearing how your investigative capacity is. How do you feel about it? Do you feel labor agreements or anything, policies are short-changing your investigations, and maybe another agency might have more resources or leeway?
Yeah, we can talk offline the next time.
Director Stanley?
I promised I wasn't going to say much, but this one really means something to me. I just want to make sure we don't cross that line of something that is suspected to not, because that could be life-altering. So I understand the concerns, and I don't disagree with the concerns, but I think that is very careful waters to tread. We don't want to create something that could possibly do more damage than good. I just would like to be clear on that.
And to follow up on that, I think that I agree. My concerns, knowing that as a mandatory reporter, if I have any inkling of suspected, I am supposed to make the report, and I am not an investigator. That's what DHS does. They're the investigators. And so for me to then make a claim to somebody's licensure board with something that I suspect, you know, like it just, yeah, it feels definitely like some muddy waters.
Although it is, just to clarify, and I guess I would specify, I work for one of the speech language pathology boards, so that's just where I know this from, is that all these complaints would be completely confidential, and there would be no public document until or if an action was founded.
I think it sounds like we have some more conversation to have as a board. So thank you guys for bringing this to us. I appreciate that. Future agenda items.
I can kick us off.
Great.
We have fall athlete recognition. We have our bond quarterly report, and then we have our bond oversight committee report. Our strategic planning update with Lauren Klafke. Our local contract review board for the GMGC for the ESSER projects. Our approval for ESSER-funded building ventilation work. Director Southerton, is that queued up for?
Great question. It's going to transition now because we're doing the CMGC process, so it'll come back when all the ESSER projects come back. So we'll go ahead and take that on.
Okay, thanks. And then final touches on the superintendent's evaluation process.
Great. Can we do a real quick poll if folks know that they will not be able to attend the Party with a Purpose event?
Thursday, February 16th. Was that February 16th? This was that date? I cannot attend, so there's. I will not be. February 16th. So there's 3 rooms.
Nope, this is good because it'll let us figure out how many tickets we have to figure out.
And with all hands raised on the Party with a Purpose.
Thursday, February 16th. I can make it.
Not even.
Nope.
Party of the Mona? Yes, please.
Yeah. So we've got 3 yeses and 4 nos.
Great, that helps us. Thank you.
Yeah.
On future agenda, this is the second January work session meeting. We've been stating that those would be held online, on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still appropriate for this? I'm just asking. Is it appropriate for what needs to be done? Is there any need for in-person rather than, just opening that up as a question? But I know that we said if we felt that there was a need for us to be in this building, we should be in this building. So I have no idea.
I've heard no indication, and I will actually be out of town that day, so having it virtual will be better for me.
Great. Done.
Virtual.
Next one is virtual. Any other agenda items or orders for the good of the board? It didn't come out right, I think.
I think Chief Rosales Correa has a request for us to do a photo op.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just really quick, just an announcement. I was going to mention that Centennial Neighborhood Emergency Team and Centennial Community Association are putting on a volunteer fair, volunteer/job fair, on February 18th. So it's a Saturday afternoon, if anyone was interested in spreading the word.
Great.
It is 3 to 5, and it is at the Center Powered by Youth on 167 South Star.
Director Southerton. Director Lynn gave me a flyer for it, and I'll pass it along. Yeah.
All right. Thank you all very much. This meeting is adjourned at 9:06 p.m.